Hello and welcome to our program on composting. I'm Christine Kinsey. I'm a co-coordinator of Mothers Out Front in Winthrop, and I'm here with one of our Mothers Out Front members, Cindy Luppi. Cindy is National Field Director for Clean Water Action. She supervises state campaigns across the country, working for a healthier tomorrow for all communities. She serves on a broad range of committees and boards, working toward clean energy and addressing issues of climate change and supporting environmental, economic, and racial priorities. Cindy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and thank you, Mothers Out Front, for everything you do here in Winthrop. It's everything we do here in Winthrop. It's great to see.
Thanks. It's great to be part of such a good organization. Cindy's here to give us an overview of Clean Water Action campaigns. Cindy, tell us about the PFAS bill.
Well, I bet some of you have seen some of the media coverage of PFAS, which is a class of toxic chemicals that are very problematic because they're very persistent. They're linked to significant health damage, particularly certain cancers, liver disease. They can really interfere with vaccines and immune issues. There's a host of health concerns that stem from exposure to PFAS. So a lot of the work that we do is working to find safer alternatives for PFAS in everyday products, and had a big victory in Massachusetts this year. One of the few bills that passed through the legislature focused on phasing out PFAS in firefighter protective gear, turnout gear, so that firefighters and all of us are better protected and less exposed to PFAS. Unfortunately, the cancer rates among firefighters are 2 to 3 times higher than the general population, and we need to do everything we can to better protect the people who are first on the scene to protect us.
Absolutely. I'm glad that got passed.
Yeah, big thank you to the state legislature and the governor for signing the bill.
For sure. How about, what can you tell us about air quality?
Well, I think air quality, air pollution is one of those issues that I think we instinctively understand the best because we can sometimes see it. We can sometimes taste it. And certainly if people have asthma or any respiratory issues, you can feel it. So a lot of our public health research is super clear that the best thing to do is to reduce air pollution to improve air quality. One of the things that the state legislature this year didn't get to is a bill that would require reductions in air pollution from vehicles in hotspot communities, often environmental justice communities that have the biggest burdens, and also least access to adequate health care. So this is an issue that we still want to focus on, and we still want to reduce all sources of air pollution everywhere throughout the state, because our health will improve the lower we can get those numbers.
Absolutely. How about reducing the siting of polluting facilities in environmental justice communities?
Well, Winthrop is neighbored by a number of environmental justice communities that historically bear more of the pollution burden. I think you can think about Revere, Lynn, Chelsea, East Boston. Certainly pollution clusters have formed there over the years. And one of the things we're working to do together with public health allies is have more safeguards for these communities so that there's more of a cumulative analysis of the burdens that already exist before we add to those burdens. So part of that bill has passed. Part of the issue is still in play, and I think we really appreciate the leadership from the municipal and elected officials that are focusing on those problem areas, because people should be equally protected regardless of which zip code they live in.
Absolutely.
It's a real equity issue. So it's a big priority for all of us.
Good. Glad to hear it. How about the wind waste trash to energy plant in Saugus?
Well, speaking of one of our neighbors, I bet some of you can see the smokestack from that facility from your house. I know I can. That is the nation's oldest trash burner, older than any other across the country. And it has experienced a number of problems and malfunctions. One of the biggest issues of concern right now is that the ash landfill that is right next to the incinerator is almost at capacity. So we need to make sure that there's careful planning for how that and when that gets shut down, so that the close neighbors and our whole area is better protected. And we need to keep pushing for zero waste alternatives that will reduce what we unnecessarily send to that facility. Winthrop is one of the communities that sends its trash there, so we have a real vested interest in that issue.
And is there a plan for where our trash will go when that happens, when that closes?
Well, that is part of the planning that's needed, for sure. One of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit later this evening is how we can reframe that question to think about how we can reduce what needs to get sent to landfills and incinerators on the front end. And obviously the state is very much in the thick of considering how we handle what can't be recycled or reused or repurposed. Yet, at the state level, there's every 10 years, there's a solid waste master plan that is created, and a lot of what's exciting about those plans, or what can be exciting about those plans, although I may be the first person ever to consider that plan exciting and say so publicly, is that there are alternatives to burning or burying trash that actually we really want to talk more, for example, tonight about compost, where we can take food scraps, which is currently about 22% of our waste stream that's going to that facility and to the others in the state, how we can compost food scraps and help improve soil health through the end product.
That would be great.
For example.
Yeah, for sure. What about waste reduction in chemical recycling?
This is a very confusing topic, and it's because of the term chemical recycling. It should be always said with quotes around it, because it's used by the chemical industry to refer to newer technology that either with enzymes or through traditional combustion manages plastic waste and chemicals. And the goal of what they say they would like to do is to reuse the constituent ingredients in those materials. But it's very hard to do at scale. There are very few facilities that have been proven to be successful, and there are unacceptable health and safety impacts for the neighborhood and the community that hosts the facility. There have been some big exposés about particularly the risk of fires, for example, that are uncontrollable, that can be a catastrophe for the workers and for communities. So we really wanted to help educate people about better alternatives, including plastics use reduction.
Good. I like that a lot. Can you give us an update on the Massachusetts climate bill?
Wow. For several of the last legislative sessions, there's been sort of a big omnibus bill that has pulled together different pieces and parts of climate policy. And it's important because there are so many different parts of our economy and our communities that play into the issue and that are affected by the issue. So there's sort of decades of work to do. The last few sessions, we've gotten some pretty comprehensive bills through. This past session, the legislature was not able to produce a final bill. So there is some thought that there might be some forward momentum in a special session that gets set up in the fall, but that's not sure yet. So I think people are feeling a little frustrated that the legislature couldn't quite move this forward, and are hopeful that we might be able to in special session. But one thing that makes me hopeful is that we do have a governor, Governor Healy, who cares deeply and has invested some real resources in the administration to address climate issues, and particularly climate justice, which is pretty exciting. And I think we're also going to be working with the administration a little bit more on these issues, so we don't put every single egg in the climate basket in the legislative hands.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, thank you for all of those updates. Does anyone in the audience have any questions on any of these topics that Cindy's talked about?
My question would be, one of the things that I think is missing in a lot of our bills, and I know that a lot of us are pushing for that, in Benjamin Moore. If I buy the paint from Benjamin Moore, I should be able to return to whatever store that sells Benjamin Moore. The things like all the disposable things that we're typically reusing, things like people's electronic rechargeable vapes and batteries, and we need a different way to look at the people who are producing it not being allowed to produce it or being required to recycle it themselves.
Yeah, so the question is, what is the status of extended producer responsibility issues in Massachusetts, and what does the debate look like? And there's a lot of support for producer responsibility of a good at the end of its life cycle. That's the kind of process we have with things like car batteries, for example, so that municipalities aren't stuck with the cost and the impacts of disposal. And there's been a lot of great work done around, Wendy, as you mentioned, paint cans, things that are hard to recycle. And there's a lot of potential for extending that system for a number of kinds of products. I've always really liked the idea for mattresses. There's product classes that are really well served by extended producer responsibility. And the sort of the gem of the brilliance of the idea is that if there are any toxic ingredients in the product, they're typically more expensive to handle at the end of its life cycle. So it's an economic incentive for the manufacturers to use safer ingredients as well. So it's a very interesting tool that should be part of any zero waste future, which is definitely where we're headed.
That's great. Any other questions? No?
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Mothers Out Front.
Thank you. And now Cindy will walk us through her new presentation on compost.
Great. Well, thank you, Winthrop Mothers Out Front, for this opportunity to talk through some issues that I know really impact us here in Winthrop, and I'm hoping we have a great conversation tonight. The focus of this presentation and conversation is preventing waste and lessons from our grandparents. Now, I don't know about you all, but the first weekend in September is National Grandparents' Day, and I really often think about my grandparents and the impact that they had on my life. And that is, I'm sorry, not a great picture. The quality it's a little gray, but That's my mom's mom. That's my grandma. And she was so focused on preventing waste. I think she really taught me a lot about the best way to think about these issues. And she grew up, she lived through the Depression, so she thought about not wasting food. And they kept chickens, so there was also ways to keep chickens fed with food, and it stuck with us. It stuck with me and my sisters and our cousins and our whole family in ways that have lasted decades. And she also really taught us about reusing things and not throwing them away. I have this really clear memory in my head of her washing out things like bags that you would normally see people just throw away. And then she'd very carefully use clothespins to clip them to her clothesline and dry them out, and there they'd be ready for reuse. And I bet we don't even think about this today, about how our actions can stimulate similar actions decades into the future. But it's something that's really on my mind a lot around this particular time of year. And these lessons really lay the foundation for what we're going to talk about, which is waste prevention. Have been working with a number of researchers and organizations in Massachusetts to look in particular at food waste this year. And the current data shows that we throw away nearly 1 million tons per year of food scraps, which is 22% of all of our waste stream. And it's a big impact. Included in the slide, the link to the report that summarizes the research. One of the reasons that we focus here is that there are so many very tangible benefits for Winthrop and for all of us for waste prevention. And I want to give a particular shout out to Winthrop's DPW solid waste and recycling coordinator, because we have such smart and perceptive and forward-thinking and energetic staff here in Winthrop. I feel really lucky to live in this town. But to just go through some of these benefits, food recovery is a huge issue. We have people living in Massachusetts who are hungry, and it's a crime to be wasting food, given that dynamic. So that's probably benefit number one, is feeding hungry people. I'm a gardener. I'm a nutty gardener. I really love flowers and vegetables and herbs, and I know that soil health can be improved via composted material. And that's true whether you have a big farm or you have a little patio garden. There's real soil health benefits for us in composting. And again, this is a very locally pertinent issue for us here in Winthrop. If we prevent food waste, it means that there's less of a burden on landfills and on incinerators. We live, as the crow flies, we live very near the wind waste incinerator in Saugus. So this is of local concern for us, certainly. In general, I know Mothers Out Front is a big climate-focused organization. And one very exciting benefit of waste prevention is that it's often a hidden source of very potent greenhouse gas emissions of methane. Decomposing, rotting food in landfills is a big source of methane emissions, equivalent to 1.5 million metric tons of greenhouse gas equivalent in 2020. That's pretty significant. And luckily, we have a governor who wants to leave no stone unturned in the climate justice battle. We're hoping to get more and more attention to this issue in Governor Healy's administration. We also have the potential to reduce solid waste management costs through composting. One very interesting example, the town of Hamilton was one of the first communities in Massachusetts to establish curbside pickup of food scraps. And their experience is that they were able to reduce their costs by half of compost. And that's partially because what's called our tipping fees, bringing other kinds of trash to incinerators and landfills, is very expensive. We actually have the dubious distinction of having the most expensive tipping fees in the nation. So that's bad news. But the good news part of that is that comparatively, composting is much more cost effective. So that's another big and important benefit that we focus on. And then there's, just waste at the family level. The average family of 4 loses about $1,500 a year due to food waste, just food that isn't eaten and is thrown out. And I don't know about you all, but I could have a very nice vacation with that kind of a budget. And I hope you all just did actually have a great summer. I'm gonna key in on the climate aspect of these benefits in particular, because again, I know that this is a topic that's really near and dear to Mothers Out Front's heart. The reduction in methane gases alone, that climate impact, that would save the same amount of pollution as on average 116,000 cars produce every year. That is a big benefit. And again, we're really hoping that Governor Healy jumps on this. So to make that more than hope, but actually a campaign of action, Clean Water Action, MassPIRG, and a number of other organizations have launched this Plate to Planet campaign that's focused on reducing food waste and really incorporating the lessons of our grandparents in doing so. As I mentioned, we have some very significant local context. The Saugus incinerator and ash landfill is the oldest in the nation. And we're very near to seeing the 50-foot level of ash at the landfill that's right next to the incinerator. And when that happens, that permit closes. And we have to look at some other way of handling ash from the incinerator. So there's a lot of motivation for us locally to reduce the waste that we're sending to that facility and other facilities. And it's just a very local example of the cost of failing to jump on this better alternative of handling food waste. And for those of you who are sort of thinking that this is a very heavy topic, I want to make sure to emphasize the good news here. Massachusetts has been an early leader in thinking about composting and food waste reduction. Early on, we were one of the first states that required big restaurants, big universities, cafeterias, who produce, initially it was more than a ton of food waste per week. Now it's ratcheted down to a half a ton of food waste per week. They are banned from taking that food waste to a landfill or an incinerator. So that means there's been some really exciting innovation about the systems that manage that more commercial food waste. So we have some early innovation here in Massachusetts that can speak to our next steps. Massachusetts also really believes in food recovery. Our very exciting solid waste master plan encourages it, and there are some wonderful examples of institutions that have sprung up. There's a community project in Arlington where residents go around and pick up day-old pastries and food from local restaurants and save them and have a shop where people can come for free and get access to the food. And those shelves are very full all the time because of the amount of food waste from places like Panera that would otherwise just be going in the trash. Every community could look at a program like that. There are churches that we work with that have a spot in their refrigerators for food that will go uneaten, that, like, say you're going on vacation and you know that it will just get thrown out while you're, when you come back, it will have spoiled. You can bring it to this refrigerator in your local church, and people who are having trouble keeping fed can access it. There's some really interesting, innovative, sort of community building ways that we can look at food recovery and prevent waste, which is exciting. And there's some level of momentum and excitement about composting that's building. In less than 10 years, we've gone from having only 24 communities in Massachusetts who have some level of food scrap collection program to 89. And Winthrop is one of them. So proud to be on that list and to fully address this issue. We want to make sure that every community has resources and access to programs like food recovery and curbside pickup of composting. Ideally, every community could have curbside pickup of compost that gets built into waste policies in your municipality. So the last thing I want to say is that we are making some progress. It's a big nut to crack, but between 2016 and 2020, we've nearly doubled the amount of food that we've been able to divert away from landfilling and incinerating, from 190,000 tons to 360,000 tons as of 2022. So there has been some progress, which is the good news part of the discussion. But the bad news part of the discussion is that we're kind of losing steam a bit and falling behind our goals. The Solid Waste Master Plan for 2020 set a tonnage goal for how much food waste would be diverted, and we fell short of that by about 20%. And I think even more concerning, we are not on track to hit the 2030 goal, which is established at 780,000 tons per year. It's a big goal. It would represent more than a doubling of food waste diversion from 2020 to 2030, and we really need to hit that goal. So what we need is some big momentum here, and Winthrop and Winthrop Mothers Out Front can be a part of this. There's some really clear steps that we can take. One is to encourage our state to do what California and Vermont has done, which is to set and then make sure we reach the goal of diverting all food waste from the waste stream. Now that's going to take a lot of investment steadily in composting infrastructure and the siting of new facilities. It's going to take a lot of public education to make sure we get everybody's input into the program and that we all get on board with this really important goal. And critically, from a health perspective, it also means that we have to keep toxics like PFAS out of the food stream, because if we don't do that, then we run the risk of contaminating compost or biosolids with PFAS, and that has led to the closure of farms who have been the recipients of those composted and processed materials, because PFAS, unfortunately, is one of those very persistent toxins. It's called the forever chemical. It is a very strong chemical bond, and cleanup of PFAS is very challenging and expensive. So that is a key piece of what we need to do here. We also need to avoid false solutions. When the chemical industry says that they can handle these issues in facilities like so-called advanced recycling or chemical recycling, we have to be very cautious to look at the feasibility, the affordability, and the safety of those solutions before we dive in. So avoiding those false solutions is a big part of our job here as well. And we really can expand in community building ways, food scrap collection and public education activities. I'm very excited to talk to folks about maybe roles that students in schools can play in promoting and giving people exposure and practice with composting. And finally, we want to make sure that every community has the resources to move forward on composting. What we've seen so far is that wealthier communities have been able to afford to move forward, but we think it's a justice issue, that there needs to be funding that focuses on lower income and environmental justice communities so that they can be part of the solution as well. So that is sort of a quick summary of the report findings. And I'm going to shift now to a second piece of the lessons from our grandparents, which is reuse, 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 and how to zero out single-use plastics. And I'm going to talk about a program called Rethink Disposable, which has the goal of stopping trash before it starts, which is always the most comprehensive and cheapest way to address the situation. So Rethink Disposable is a funded program that sets up teams who work directly with food businesses and schools and other institutions to make the switch from disposable or single-use plastics to reusable foodware. And it's a program that has been remarkably successful, working with food systems and co-designing what is needed for reuse systems in these businesses. So we work really closely with the businesses and with the schools to make sure there's product research and delivery and setup and funding for the reusables themselves. So far, this is the track record of the program. This is a data-driven program. Restaurants have found that switching to reusables away from single-use plastics, that you can save anywhere every single year from $3,000 to $22,000. And that is such good news, especially for restaurants who are on tight margins. You can eliminate, a single restaurant can eliminate the average of 110,000 items of disposable packaging. And that's the equivalent of 1,300 pounds of waste in one average restaurant. But these are ongoing annual results. So this is a program whose gifts keep on giving. And the picture up here just shows you what it looks like to go from disposables to reusables. It's very doable. This is not a problem we need to figure out how to solve. We know how to take care of this. And I feel excited that Massachusetts is one of the states that has launched this program along with other places up and down the eastern seaboard. It was actually launched in California. These multi-state results show that over the course of the last 10 years, with the majority of the work being done on the early end in California, over 28 million pieces of single-use disposables annually have been stopped from going to landfills, incinerators, to our coast and to our beaches, which is a huge benefit for a coastal community like Winthrop. And there are all different kinds of examples we can look at for institutions that have moved this forward. There's a temple in the city of Fremont that has a core principle of feeding anywhere from 1,500 to 10,000 people who visit them daily. And they have completely switched out single-use plastics with non-toxic reusables. The city of LA has launched their reusable foodware microgrant program and has made available over $600,000 to help particularly disadvantaged community restaurants in different neighborhoods in LA. And in just 1 year, actually a little less than a year, over 110 restaurants have jumped on board, which is some good initial momentum. This is just a sampling of some of the places in Philadelphia that are moving forward, all different kinds of restaurants and schools. And this is, again, what it looks like. It didn't. It's seeing here an example of the Coriana restaurant in Philadelphia, what the before and after looks like. This is a before and after from Jean's Cafe, and you can just see, like, sort of tray by tray, how easy it is to think about going from plastic cutlery to reusable, from plastic cups to reusable. It's very doable. And I also want to flag that in New Jersey, the work there has been really successful, keying in on soup kitchens, on churches, on Meals on Wheels and senior centers. Just one example of this is the Franciscan Charities of Newark, where they've converted from single-use disposals to 100% reusables. And annually, they've eliminated 1 million pieces of plastic from going to incinerators and landfills each and every year. And they've reduced 10 tons of waste. The New Jersey Meals on Wheels program in Mercer County has saved over 1,000 pounds of single-use plastics and over $4,000. There's different case studies that show how they've done this and exactly what the benefits have been. In Monmouth County, the Meals on Wheels program has saved $72,000 annually, and those are funds that can be reinvested in the program for more service. So we are seeing lots of community institutions experience great benefits, and this is also something that I think is an intangible benefit. Many of the faith communities have flagged that they see that this is also about eating with dignity, that you're using real plates and forks and cups, that there's this benefit to eating in a way that respects you a little bit more as a human, which I think is very interesting. New Jersey has done a lot of work on the Skip the Stuff campaign. I don't know if any of y'all have heard of this, but it is a program where municipalities can pass an ordinance that requires restaurants to give cutlery or condiments only upon request for takeout orders. I don't know about the rest of you, but my takeout bags often include plastic forks, for example, when I'm eating at home and have my everyday forks right handy. So it's something that we can think about. The second largest city in New Jersey, Jersey City, has taken this step. So it'd be interesting to think if Winthrop would want to work on that, or if Mothers Out Front and Clean Water would want to work on that. You just have a couple other examples. In Connecticut, a lot of the progress has been in schools. Middletown schools are making this shift and are preventing 15 tons of waste from entering the waste stream. Cool one. There's a triathlon association that, instead of having individual plastic bottles of water, has made reusable cups available for triathletes, and it's been incredibly successful. Rhode Island has done a lot of work also in the schools. A lot of this involves things that you wouldn't think of, like for schools to have a reusables-based cafeteria, you need a dishwasher. So sometimes that means investing in a one-time purchase of a dishwasher, or sometimes it means upgrading a dishwasher that already exists. But we've been able to find program funding and grant funding for the schools that make this a free program for the schools. So there are ways to do this that don't harm school budgets and also prevent the purchase every single year of single-use plastic. So it's a cost savings in terms of how schools are experiencing this. In Massachusetts, Lexington, Newton are moving forward. Newton North is working on a very innovative reusable takeout container pilot where there's sort of a closed loop system, and students and teachers bring back the reusables if they take out food or beverages, which has turned out to be incredibly well-loved and successful. The Truro Community Kitchen on the Cape, I don't know if any of y'all ever go down to Cape Cod, but this is a meal delivery community program in Truro, and they've shifted to 100% reusable takeout containers, and they have found that they're experiencing $6,500 a year in savings and preventing all of those black, non-recyclable pieces of plastic from entering the waste stream. So there's lots of excitement here in Massachusetts directly, and the people who are working on Rethink Disposable they've got the bug. They're very excited about making this single change, and I just want to close by saying, that wasn't the slide. I just want to close by saying, together we can do this. So I'm very up for the conversation of working with folks who live in Winthrop. I love being a Winthrop resident. Working with folks who live here on how we can move any of this forward. And again, really thanking the Winthrop Department of Public Works, Solid Waste and Recycling Manager for all she does to lay the foundation for these kinds of small changes that really add up over time. So thank you all, and let's dig in together.